Rome's power seemed unshakable, its silver denarius respected on every frontier, the foundation of a global economy. But behind marble walls, emperors began quietly reducing the coin's silver content, justifying each reduction as fiscal necessity. Prices surged, markets faltered, and trust eroded, igniting a chain reaction that would help bring the empire to its knees. What made this slow currency decay so catastrophic? And why do echoes of Rome's monetary collapse keep appearing in modern crises right up to today? In the first century of empire, Rome's prosperity ran on silver. The denarius, a small, bright coin weighing about 3.9 grams and struck from nearly pure silver, flowed from the mints of Augustus and his successors. Its surface bore the emperor's face and the promise of value recognized from Britain to Egypt. For traders, soldiers, and tax collectors alike, the denarius was more than money. It was a guarantee. Assays from coins unearthed in distant provinces confirm a silver purity between 95 and 98%, a level rarely matched by rival states. Mint officials in Rome and provincial cities worked with precision, checking weights, calibrating dies, and keeping records as coins left the treasury in neat leather sacks. The denarius became the common language of commerce, accepted in bustling Mediterranean ports and tiny frontier villages. A merchant in Antioch or a legionary on the Rhine could trust that a Roman denarius would be honored at a fair rate, its weight and shine a silent pledge of imperial backing. This trust extended far beyond the empire's borders. In markets as distant as Dacia or Mauritania, local traders preferred Roman silver to their own rulers' coins. Archaeologists have charted the denarius's reach on maps filled with coin finds, evidence of a currency that moved with armies, grain fleets, and caravans. Even in times of local turmoil, the denarius held steady, binding together millions of subjects in a single fiscal web. Behind this stability stood a vast administrative machine. Treasury officials tracked silver shipments from Spanish mines, monitored mint output, and responded to the empire's growing needs. As Rome's frontiers expanded under emperors like Trajan, the costs of defense, monumental building, and a swelling army pressed ever harder on the budget. Yet, for generations, the denarius absorbed these strains. Its high silver content and consistent weight anchored prices, wages, and taxes. A legionary's annual pay of 300 denarii could buy years' worth of grain in Egypt's markets, a fact recorded in surviving papyrus receipts. For ordinary people, the coin's reliability turned imperial promises into daily reality. The denarius at its height was more than a piece of metal. It was the foundation of trust between ruler and ruled, buyer and seller, center and periphery. Only against this backdrop of confidence does the later story of decline and debasement become possible. Nero's reign brought the first deliberate break in Rome's monetary tradition. In the years after the Great Fire of 64 CE, faced with mounting costs for rebuilding, military campaigns in the East, and the demands of an extravagant court, the emperor made a fateful choice. The denarius, once nearly pure, was quietly altered. Its weight dropped from 3.9 grams to 3.4 grams, and its silver content slipped from almost 98% to around 93%. For the first time, the state extracted value not by raising taxes, but by reducing the silver in every coin, an invisible levy on anyone holding Roman money. Mint records and coin assays confirm the change. A 20% reduction in silver per coin spread across millions of pieces. To the untrained eye, the new denarii looked much like the old, bright official stamped with the emperor's image. But for merchants and money changers, the difference was real. Over time, as more of the lighter, lower silver coins entered circulation, prices for goods began to drift upward. The logic was simple. If the state could mint more coins from the same amount of silver, it could meet its expenses without open tax hikes. Yet every transaction now carried the shadow of uncertainty. Later emperors followed this pattern. Trajan, Antoninus Pius, and Commodus each trimmed the standard further, usually to pay for new wars or to buy loyalty through donatives to the army. By the early 3rd century, the denarius had lost much of its former strength, but the pressure only grew. In 215 CE, Caracalla introduced a new coin, the Antoninianus. Advertised as worth 2 denarii, it weighed only about 5 grams and contained just 1.5 denarii worth of silver. The radiate crown on Caracalla's head signaled its double value, but the metal inside told another story. Numismatists today confirm the mismatch through chemical assays and hoard studies. The Antoninianus was a calculated move, stretching silver stocks to pay a swelling army and cover state deficits, while presenting the illusion of abundance. The hidden tax of debasement was now built into the currency itself. Each new issue diluted the value of coins already in hand. Trust, once anchored in the weight and purity of Roman silver, began to erode. Traders started to weigh coins, to test their metal, to favor older issues over new. The fiscal logic of seigniorage, gaining revenue by reducing precious metal content, became a central tool of imperial finance, but at the price of confidence in the money that bound the empire together. Under Gallienus, the Antoninianus slipped below 5% silver, sometimes as little as 2%. Its surface was washed in a thin, fragile sheen that wore away within weeks of use. Assays from coins minted between 260 and 268 CE confirm the collapse. What once gleamed with precious metal now rang dull and revealed a copper core. In the markets of Egypt and beyond, the effects became impossible to ignore. Surviving papyri from Oxyrhynchus record the cost of wheat and oil multiplying 5, 10, even 20 times over in a generation. Traders demanded more and more coins for the same loaf of bread, while wages struggled to keep pace with the rising tide of prices. An animated chart of the era would show 2 lines. One, the silver content of the coinage plunging toward zero. The other, the price of essentials bending sharply upward. By the late 260s CE, the Antoninianus was no longer trusted as money. It endured only because the state required taxes and payments in its own debased coin. Trust once anchored in metal now depended on force. The old fiscal web unraveled, and daily life grew anxious as each new coin carried the memory of lost value. In the year 301 AD, Diocletian ordered his officials to carve a new law into stone, one that would reach every corner of the empire. The edict on maximum prices laid out, line by line, the highest legal price for more than 1,000 goods and services. Beans, uncrushed, 60 denarii. Beef, 8 denarii a pound. Purple dyed silk or a lion, 150,000 denarii. The text thundered against greed, blaming profiteers for the inflation that had swept through every market. Anyone caught selling above the ceiling faced death. Even those who withheld goods from sale risked the same fate. Copies of the edict appeared in towns from Asia Minor to North Africa, their Latin and Greek inscriptions still legible in scattered ruins. But the law's reach exceeded its grasp. Merchants, fearing punishment, pulled their goods from the stalls. Black markets thrived in the shadows, while official markets emptied. In Egypt, papyrus records show prices quickly drifting above the legal maximum. Lactantius, writing a decade later, described bloodshed over everyday items and an edict quietly abandoned after too many deaths. The empire's attempt to force stability by decree only deepened shortages and mistrust. Behind the stone tablets, the real currency crisis continued, untouched by law. Constantine's government struck a new kind of coin, the solidus. Minted from nearly pure gold, each solidus weighed about 4.5 grams, its surface gleaming with a promise the empire had not kept for decades. The solidus was not just another reform, it was a reset, a deliberate return to hard money at the heart of imperial finance. For centuries, Rome's silver coins had grown lighter and duller, but now, in the early 4th century, gold became the anchor. The state demanded taxes and major payments from elites in Solidi. Merchants and officials hoarded them, knowing their value would hold. Over the next 7 centuries, the solidus would serve as the backbone of Byzantine commerce, its weight and purity barely changing even as emperors and borders shifted. But gold's stability came at a cost. Most Romans never handled a solidus. Daily transactions still relied on unstable silver and bronze coins, their value shifting with every new issue. For the powerful, gold offered security and the means to move wealth across a fragmented empire. For ordinary people, money remained a moving target, wages and prices still tangled in the aftermath of collapse. Centuries later, another government faced a dilemma. In August 1971, President Richard Nixon announced an end to the dollar's gold convertibility. The decision, made under pressure from foreign governments demanding gold for their dollars, broke the last link between national currencies and precious metal. Nixon's advisors debated behind closed doors, weighing the risks of inflation against the immediate threat of a run on America's gold reserves. On August 15, 1971, the United States closed the gold window. From that moment, the world's major currencies floated freely, their value determined by policy and market confidence rather than any fixed anchor. With convertibility gone, governments gained new freedom to expand money and credit. The constraint of metal was replaced by the discipline of politics and markets, often imperfect, sometimes absent. In both Rome and the modern world, the shift from hard money to managed paper brought opportunity and risk. The promise of flexibility was shadowed by the danger of excess. The story of currency, from the solidus to fiat, is a story of trust, built, broken, and rebuilt on new terms. In the autumn of 1923, the German mark became a symbol of vanishing value. Every morning, workers in Berlin lined up at factory gates, payslips in hand, as clerks rushed to count out wages not once, but twice each day. By afternoon, the cash handed out at noon had already lost a portion of its worth. Housewives pushed wheelbarrows filled with paper notes through crowded streets, racing to buy bread before prices doubled again. Shopkeepers posted prices in chalk, erasing and rewriting them as the mark tumbled against the dollar. The exchange rate, once 4 marks to a dollar in 1914, soared to 4 trillion marks to a dollar by November 1923. Diaries from the time describe a world turned upside down. One entry recounts a woman using bundles of banknotes to light her stove because it was cheaper than buying firewood. Businesses paid suppliers with goods instead of cash, or demanded gold, dollars, or Swiss francs. In the markets, a loaf of bread could cost 200 billion marks in the morning and twice as much by evening. Workers spent their pay within minutes, buying anything tangible, food, shoes, even pots, before inflation could erase their earnings. Some people, like the industrialist Hugo Stinnes, borrowed vast sums in marks, buying factories and land. When debts were repaid with worthless money, fortunes shifted overnight. For most, savings evaporated. Pensioners and civil servants, once secure, watched their life's work reduced to scraps of paper. The social fabric strained under the weight of collapse. Strikes and protests erupted as wages failed to keep pace with prices. Neighbors traded goods and favors, bypassing a currency no one trusted. In the chaos, political extremism found fertile ground, as anger and fear replaced faith in the state. The mechanics of the Weimar hyperinflation mirrored the patterns seen in ancient Rome, paper replacing silver, trust dissolving, and daily life reshaped by the relentless destruction of money. In late 2008, Zimbabwe's currency crossed a threshold few believed possible. Official figures put monthly inflation at 79.6 billion%. Prices doubled almost every day. Market traders in Harare woke to new numbers scrawled in chalk, erasing and rewriting as the Zimbabwe dollar collapsed beneath their feet. In the space of a year, the government issued notes worth $10 million, then $1 billion, then $100 trillion, each bill losing value faster than it could be spent. Ordinary people turned to survival tactics. United States dollars and South African rand changed hands in back alleys, even as police tried to enforce bans on foreign currency. Vendors at Mbare Musica market measured prices in tomatoes or maize, not paper bills, and many families converted their savings into goats or bags of cement, hoping to preserve some value. In rural areas, livestock replaced cash as a store of wealth. If a child needed school fees, a parent might sell a chicken or a sack of mealie meal to a neighbor, bypassing the currency altogether. Street entrepreneurs watched for opportunities in chaos. Some crossed into Botswana or Mozambique to buy fuel or food, then sold it at home for whatever hard currency they could get. Others relied on remittances from relatives abroad, trading United States dollars on the black market at rates that changed by the hour. For those without connections or assets, the collapse was brutal. Salaries evaporated between payday and the grocery queue. Pensioners lined up for hours, only to find that their life savings would not buy a loaf of bread. The government's final act was to legalize foreign currencies in early 2009, abandoning the Zimbabwe dollar entirely. A $100 trillion note, once a symbol of hope, became a collector's item, evidence of a system pushed past its breaking point. The story of Zimbabwe's hyperinflation is not just numbers on a chart, but a lesson in how quickly money can lose meaning when trust is destroyed. A legionary stands in the dust of an Egyptian garrison, pace slip in hand, watching the baker chalk up today's price for bread. On papyrus, his salary is 300 silver denarii a year, enough in theory to buy more than 10 years of grain if he spent every coin on wheat alone. In the open market, 1 denarius exchanges for an artaba of grain, a month's ration for a single man. But deductions for food, clothing, and equipment cut deep. The coins that reach his hand are fewer, and the cost of bread is never still. The baker, too, feels the squeeze. Each delivery of flour comes dearer than the last, and every sale must cover not just grain, but taxes and bribes. Both men measure their days in coins whose shine once meant certainty. Now, every transaction is a quiet test of what Roman money can still command. A shop clerk in 1923 Berlin counts stacks of notes, his fingers stained with ink and worry. Twice a day, he hands out wages, knowing each mark loses value before it leaves his palm. Workers rush from the pay window to the market, desperate to trade cash for anything tangible, bread, shoes, a sack of potatoes, before prices leap again. In Harare, a vendor at Mbare Musica weighs tomatoes, quoting prices in US dollars, Zimbabwe dollars, or maize, depending on the hour. Families stash savings in goats or bags of cement, watching paper money wilt in their pockets. Some cross borders to buy goods, others wait for remittances in hard currency. When trust in money breaks, survival means moving fast, shifting to barter, foreign bills, or whatever holds value the longest. Behind every price scrawled in chalk, a silent calculation. What will this be worth tomorrow? No empire falls overnight, currencies unravel, trust dissolves, and ordinary lives bear the shock. Today, over 95% of global money is fiat, created by decree, not anchored by metal or promise. As debt and inflation rise worldwide, history warns, money is only as strong as the faith behind it. When belief breaks, collapse is never just ancient history. What anchors your trust and value today?